and I'm one of the board members for IPAC Manitoba and your host for the day. With me is my fellow board member and my learning event planning volunteer, Laila De Vera and Jennifer Bonecamp. Before we start, we acknowledge that IPAC Manitoba is located on ancestral lands of Anishinaabe, Ininiwak, Ashininiwak, Dakota, and Dene, and on the homeland of the Métis. We acknowledge distinct histories of the seven numbered treaties that apply on this land. We recognized that public administration and public policy have been used as tools of colonialism and the harm it has caused Indigenous people. We are committed to promoting public administration in a way that advances reconciliation in a spirit of collaboration with Indigenous people and communities. Now, just a bit of history. The IPAC Manitoba Regional Group is a thriving community of public administrators from a diverse group, usually from municipal, provincial, and the federal governments, academic institutions, non governmental organizations, and other public sector entities. We strive for inclusivity and believe that better public policy emerges when everyone has a voice. We celebrate achievement through various awards for public administration, including our flagship annual event associated with the Lieutenant Governor's Award for Excellence in Public Administration. Our regional group was honored in 2017 with the National IPAC Regional Group of Excellence Award, primarily for our work in promoting truth and reconciliation endeavors in the public sector in concert with IPAC's National Year of Dialogue. Throughout the calendar year, our programs committee plans on a variety of subjects that are relevant to public servants and our current situation. This session or this webinar is one of those events. Today, IPAC would like to assist you in identifying risk, implementing proactive solutions, and addressing situations on potential aggression or violence to keep you and others safe in your workplace. Now, before we start, we do have a few rules. First, we have a Q&A after the talk, so we request if you can just jot down your questions or clarification so you can ask them during the Q&A section session, or you can also write down your questions in the chat box and we will read them out to you. With us right now is Nicole Arnould-Cott. She is the Director of the Legislative Security Service for Manitoba Protective Services, which is the premier provider of security services for the province of Manitoba that is working in conjunction with individuals, communities, and organizations to achieve safe and secure environment. Nicole started her career with Manitoba Justice in 2002. For 6 years, she worked with both as a juvenile counselor and a program facilitator at the Manitoba Youth Center, working hard to make a positive impact in the young person's lives, learning as much, if not more, from the youth than they learned from her. In 2008, she became a full-time staff trainer, and for 8 years, she specialized in training corrections staff on communication and self-defense. In 2016, Nicole began working for Protective Service Branch and later became the director of the Legislative Security Service in 2017. So let me just give the floor to Ms. Arnould-Cott for personal safety for public servants.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. This is my first webinar, so I might not be very familiar with the screen and the format, so please bear with me. I hope to spend just a little bit of time with you this afternoon and discuss personal safety, whether it would be in the office, whether you're working from home, walking to or from the office. If you have any questions later on, there'll be an opportunity and I hope I'll be able to answer them. What we're going to discuss today is people in crisis. Oh, there we go. People in crisis, things to look out for when you're dealing with somebody who is in crisis, a stance that'll keep you safe, as well as different communication approaches you can do, as well as just things in your office and around your office that can help you keep yourself safe. So within this, we're going to go through a lot of components. I'm sure many of you are familiar with some of the components and others might be new for you. So I just hope you enjoy the hour and I hope that you can learn something. Again, I'm new with this software, so there may be a few times where I ask questions or look for the group for answers. If you just want to throw in your chat or do something like that, that would be great. Oh, here we go. So the first thing we're going to discuss is when people are angry or emotionally or very highly emotionally, they don't think clearly. I always think back and relate this to a 4-year-old who's having a temper tantrum or somebody who's just had very, very tragic news. No matter how calm we are with them and how we try to problem solve with them, unless we diffuse the emotion first, we cannot solve the problem. So first we want to be able to learn today how to diffuse somebody's emotion while they're in crisis. Secondly, we're going to learn how to manage that crisis. So if you don't mind just spending a few times, and you can throw out on your chat, what are some signals of anger? What are some ways that we know somebody is angry? I hear raised voice, tone of voice, banging things around, deep sighs, an aggressive stance. Thank you. Those are all excellent. There are so many different signs of anger. And that's why when we talk about the signals, it's important to know that body language is going to be probably the key. We call them verbal and paraverbal signals. So as mentioned, use of profanity or sarcasm, venting, verbal attacks, threatening comments, loud and aggressive tone of voice, inflection on specific words. Those are all the things that when we put it together and with the body language, are we going to notice that? Paraverbals are the inflection, like we said, the tone of voice. Raising your hand, how many of you speak French? Okay, I may not have any. So for this exercise, if you speak French, I was going to say you're out just for the next minute. But I'm going to say something in French, and you can tell me what my emotion is. Je suis très jolie et intelligente. Je suis très fière d'être ta grand-mère. Does anybody have an idea what I may have said there? What I actually said was, you are very lovely and very, very smart. I am so proud to be your grandmother. However, my facial expressions, my tone, the way I appeared seemed loud and threatening. So the words that people say are often less of a signal than how the body and the comments and the inflection of tone interact. Non-verbal signals of anger are finger pointing and gesturing, reddening of the facial regions, eye contact, muscle tension, intimidating body positions, such as what you said, fist clench, anger, and actual violence towards a person. Now that is the worst case scenario and everything we're going to do to avoid that today. When people are angry, there's different phases of the anger, and we'll talk about that later. But what they will try to do is, no matter whether they know you or not, they're going to try to get to your emotional buttons. They're going to try to say something that is going to trigger you, because what somebody who is angry wants is you to meet them halfway. So the angrier they get, they want you to get equally angry. So if you could just throw in the chat, what are some things that push your emotional buttons? I know for me, there's one of the triggers for sure is when somebody accuses me of something I didn't do. So if I have to become aware of what my emotional triggers are, because if I'm dealing with a client or somebody who's frustrated and they say, I can't believe you would allow such a thing to happen, and all of a sudden didn't, I have to watch my, I'll say the fiery French person in me, I have to watch that. I'm not going to react to that. So there's just different things that people's emotional buttons. So here's it, being blamed for something. If somebody physically invades your space or pushes you. So if they're raising, their voice at you. So there's so many things that, and they're all different. We have when I'm told that I'm useless, when you're there to help. Exactly. So these are all things that we have to be cognizant of, because somebody who, whether it's on the other end of the phone or in front of us, sees these emotional buttons, and they're going to realize what might be offensive to me may not trigger somebody else. So rapid fire, if they're a stranger to us, they may try different things, because what they want is for that emotional button to just burst. And why are they doing that? Because angry people want us to just be as angry. So then the blame can come on who? Us. The employee, the employer, that they said, well, this is how I reacted. So we have to be aware of what happens. And oftentimes when our emotional buttons get pushed, what happens is, because now we become emotional and we may become a tad fearful, is our eyes lock with their eyes. And we miss all the hazards and awarenesses that could potentially hurt us away, because all we're doing is focusing on that person. So the hazards and awarenesses that I want you to consider, this is when you're walking to and from your office, if there's somebody invading your space in an office area or in a communal area that is getting angry, escalated, you can see the person's in crisis, is look out for these different hazards and awarenesses. And I'm going to explain them as we go through. So people have their hands. What you want to look at is, where are the person's hands? Are their fists clenched? Because that can show that they may be physically wanting to get closer, or they're angry. Are their hands in their pockets or in their hoodie and you can't see where their hands are? We oftentimes, when we do exercises as groups, if we have somebody who's even slightly agitated with us, and all of a sudden we start talking in an escalated tone, and then step back and regroup, and we'll talk to groups and say, where was a person's hands? They won't be aware, because we're so focused on eye-to-eye and face-to-face contact, we miss this. So just looking at being aware where the hands are. Weapons and chemicals. Now, weapons and chemicals, we're not talking about guns and knives and the worst case scenario. We're talking about, is it in front of your workstation? Do you have a hot coffee that is close by? Is the person coming in and talking to you, and as they're escalated, do they have an aluminum water bottle? Do you have a stapler on your desk? I remember once I was dealing with a client and they were very angry and agitated and crying, and I didn't necessarily feel like there was a threat towards me, but I wasn't sure what was happening. And as I saw in the corner of my desk, there was these large pair of scissors. So as the person was talking, I just slightly just dragged the scissors and put them, in a quiet area, because I became aware of, I wanted to make sure that that area around me was clear of weapons and chemicals. Other persons. Other persons is, now, is there anybody around me? Do I have an office colleague? Do I have an office and somebody in an office nearby? Is there somebody else who could come and assist me if I needed to? Somebody else who could help de-escalate me, maybe somebody who's going to require to call 911 from their office while I'm dealing with this person who's angry, or just another person who can step in. So is there anybody else that's going to help me? And on the flip side of that, how many other people are there? Is this person gaining an audience? Are people getting drawn into the situation where now there's more people that are being angry and aggressive and kind of fueling together? Or is it a situation where now you're gaining an audience? So just who are the other people who can help you in this situation, and what may become harmful in this situation? And then we discuss escape routes. So whether you're formulating your office in an area, you may not be able to get to a exit door and be able to run. But where is another area that, should a situation go from bad to worse, you could escape to? Where is there? Could you step 5 steps back and there's another cubicle that'll kind of keep you safe? Is there a closet door if a situation went from bad to worse? Where could you go if the situation was unsafe and you could not leave your area? The other one is footing, visibility, and odors. So oftentimes when you're dealing with someone who is angry, you want to be able to look at what in the area could kind of impede me from moving back. Am I attached in an office where there's cubicle after cubicle after cubicle? So there's literally, I'm boxed in, so even if I try to shuffle away, I don't have much. Or is there something that I can trip on that's in the area? Visibility. If you leave and you go from a dark room to a lit room, or just kind of what is happening around me with my sight lines. And odors. Is the person have odors on them that aren't typical? Are you smelling strong sense of alcohol? Is there something that would tell you that there's maybe a problem? And then cover. Cover is simply, what can I use as a barrier or a shield to protect me? Is that, do I have the ability to close the door? If somebody was looking like they were going to throw a projectile at me, could I lift my laptop? Do I duck under my desk? So what is something that I can kind of cover and use for protection? And my suggestion is, without ever being concerned that situations may happen, these are just extra tools in your tool belt. And my suggestion is knowing, oh, chances are if somebody's angry at me, I'm going to lock my eyes and I may not see this. Is just look around your office today and see, what do I have that could protect me, and what could I look at that I could just potentially do a little bit differently. Minimizing our target areas. Now, if a situation starts to get from bad to worse, you're waiting for a partner to attend, you're trying to de-escalate somebody who's angry, you're not quite sure if you can get them de-escalated, you're waiting for police to call, you're concerned there may be some aggression. The key is wanting to minimize your target areas. Your target areas are areas that include your face, your throat, your chest, abdomen, and groin. And why you want to protect those areas is because if somebody was angry at me and all of a sudden they put their fist, they got close to me and they punched me, and they punched me in the face, in the throat, in the chest, abdomen, and groin, the chances that I would fall flat to the ground would be high. However, if I can get into a safety stance and alter those target areas, the chances of that I can stay standing and get to a safe area become higher. So a punch to the face hurts. Somebody punches, I turn my shoulder slightly, and I'll show you this in a sec, and I get hit in the shoulder, it hurts a lot less. So the safety stance that we're going to talk about, I'm just going to stop sharing the screen for a second and then I'll come back. I hope that works out and I'll show you. So can everybody see me clearer now and not the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so a safety stance is what you want to do from having your body square. Somebody's angry, they're looking at you straight in the eye. They're looking at you straight in the eye. Their hands are flailing. You're feeling a little afraid. So you're square on because you're feeling a little panicked. A slight movement can help keep you safe. So the goal would be to slightly turn your body and turn your head. So now, instead of getting a punch in the face, hopefully you can duck and get it in the shoulder or get it in the thigh, right? Because you're slightly turning your body to an angle. Your hands, what you want to do is keep them open, relaxed, but in a position where if you had to react, they would come up or down. I don't know that if you've noticed, some of you may say, well, I'm not good at self-defense or I haven't done anything like this before. But if you're sitting at the Gold Eyes game and somebody throws a baseball and the ball goes nuts, all of a sudden you're talking with a friend, you see this ball coming. The first thing we're going to do is protect our hands and our head. So this is a similar motion. You want to turn your body and you want to get your hands up. I'm just going to go back to sharing the screen and hope that works. And I see I have. Thank you. Okay. So the safety stance. So you want to distance yourself 2 to 3 feet from the person. That is minimally. If you can get a little bit more distance, the better. The angrier, the better. Why we always suggest you don't want to go too far from the person is, number one, if you're getting really far and they have something for a projectile, they can gain more momentum as they're throwing. But 2 to 3 feet is what I would say is minimally. We usually would say the person's arm's reach, one arm's reach away. And when they would say, whose arm's reach, we would always say, well, the person with the longest arm reach. So I'm 5'1". I understand that my arm's reach is probably going to be smaller than somebody else's. So 3 feet is a good distance to keep from somebody who's angry or escalated. You want a slight body angle to minimize those. So this doesn't look like we're ready to kung fu fight. We're not turning our body. We're not looking aggressive. We're not looking like we want to fight. They won't even notice it. Trust me, somebody who's in crisis, they're feeling angry, they're venting, their tone has escalated. If you slightly turn your body and listen to them and your hands are in the air, hands at waist level, up and down, they will not notice that you have shifted into a safety position and a safety stance, and they will continue to do it all while keeping yourself safety. When people are in crisis, we're just going to talk about this. There's different stages of crisis. The anxiety stage, the defensive stage, the crisis stage, the recovery stage, and the post-crisis stage. If the world was perfect and everybody who phoned our office or came into the office, we could meet them at the anxiety stage, it would be good. Because when somebody's at the anxiety stage, what are some things we may notice when people are anxious? Help me out here. What are a few things we notice? Elevated voice. We start to elevate our voice a bit. Somebody's fidgety. Yeah, that's right, Al. People can't look us in the eye. Looking a little nervous, very quiet. Sometimes they are having a hard time, right? nail biting. Yes. So those are all the things that we see that make people feel anxious. If we can meet them at the anxiety stage, we can be empathetic, we can do the listening, we can diffuse that emotion there. The chances are that the situation can get angrier out is very minimal. Now, the next slide, we're going to talk about a few of the things you're going to do. And many of you have taken these courses, some of you may have not, but either way, you're going to go, oh, I do that all the time. We do. We use a lot of these skills every day. You're going to say, oh, I am actually pretty good at de-escalating somebody when they're anxious or kind of dealing with that because of our experience in dealing with people in the public. The key is if we can get there, we can. However, sometimes these people, they don't come to us anxious. We are the last straw, the last phone call, the last person they can see. So oftentimes, and I'll give an example about our building here. So the legislative building, somebody may be in crisis. They may be having a health issue, feeling like they've gone to every avenue they possibly can. And now they say, that's it. I'm over. I have nobody else to talk to. I am going to go and I'm going to go talk to somebody at the legislative building. So the anxiety stage has been building for this person for perhaps weeks, maybe months on end. And today is the day. So when they walk into the building and they start talking to security or staff, or they start calling different offices, they're already in the defensive stage. And when somebody's in the defensive stage, it means that they are getting angry. Now you are sitting there and you are trying your best to de-escalate because the voice has calmed up, where the pacing may be faster. They may be walking back and forth faster. There might be now inflections of swearing. And now this is where the hitting the emotional button starts. This is where they can start going, and you do nothing to help me. And you get paid to do this and nobody can help me. And as you're trying to answer them, you may hear things like, are you stupid? I've tried that 1,000 times. So now the defensive stage is where you're saying, okay, now I have to start using these skills and start looking out for those hazards and awarenesses. What's around my desk? Is there something that they can use as a weapon? Can I see their hands? Does this person smell like they may be intoxicated? Where are we going? So this is really where all the work happens, is when somebody hits the defensive stage. Crisis stage is all heck has broken loose. Now that could be the person where they're having the full-on meltdown, where maybe something gets thrown across a desk, but it could also be a situation where the person in crisis will sit down and just start to cry consolably. It takes a lot of work to get somebody from the crisis stage back down. The important thing to notice about this cycle is that for every emotion that goes down, it can go up as quickly. So our goal is, if we have somebody who's in the crisis stage, we want to try to just get them back down to anxiety, but knowing that it's going to be a slow process. We can't start problem solving right away. We can't start giving them solutions. We have to manage the emotion. Recovery stage is when the person has realized, okay, I was out of control. This is not your fault. I was targeting you. I apologize. How can I help? This stage of the person is very fragile. We have to understand that if we say the wrong thing, if somebody else walks in the room and gives a person a look that may trigger them, they can go back into crisis or defensive stage right away. So we have to understand that although somebody's calmed down, they're far more rational and willing to talk to us, the likelihood or the chances that they can escalate if they get emotionally charged again are high. Post-crisis stage is in a perfect world. In a perfect world, somebody in crisis calls back and says, oh, I'm really sorry about the way I behaved, or that person actually is able to talk to somebody, there's found a resolution, we have a plan, and then somebody can say, okay, so the next time you come in, instead of yelling and swearing at me or at the staff, what could you do differently? Most of the time in the public sector, the post-crisis stage doesn't happen as often as if you're in a client-based relationship with someone. However, if you're answering phones, if you have people coming to your desk as a client or just somebody from the community, you may be seeing anxiety and defensive stage on a regular basis, depending on some of what you do. There we go, my apologies. There's two different approaches you want to deal with when you're dealing with people who are in anxiety, crisis, or defensive stages. Well, all the stages, and it's a position-based approach or an interest-based approach. Interest-based is the key, unless you're in a situation where your safety is threatened. So a position-based approach is forcing the other person to change their position they've taken during the conflict. So basically saying, no, you're wrong. The perception of the conflict is a competition that needs to be won, win or lose. Now, this is harsh. When would one use a position-based approach? You may have different examples that'll come up, but for us and for me, it's more somebody is angry, our safety is being jeopardized, people are being berated and we don't get paid for that. So the line is drawn in the sand now. It is simply, if you do not leave, we will be calling police. If you don't stop swearing at me, I will not help you. I will be calling security if you do not leave this office right now. So basically, the balanced approach, let's communicate, it's not, my safety is at risk. So this is basically the last straw. That is a position-based approach. Generally only employed during crisis situations where you're feeling threatened. The other is way more work, far more safe, but way more work. And it's an interest-based approach. So now you want to understand what is addressing the person's interest, their needs and motivation of their position. A solution is achieved through communication and cooperation. So it's a win-win process. This is where it takes time. Somebody comes in, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're trying to push the emotional buttons, or they're just you can see the frustration in that anxiety stage or they can't get the help. And we're gonna have to take a few minutes to understand that, oh, they tried Avenue A, they tried Avenue B, they tried Avenue C. The pandemic has been really hard on them. They're lacking social interaction. You're gonna hear so much about their story. But through understanding where the person comes from, you may be more inclined to have a little bit more patience and through cooperation, try to find a resolution for them. And oftentimes that's not us doing the work for the client, that's us just taking the time to listen to them and providing them with a phone number, an email address, a form, anything that they may require, but where they need the attention and to be heard first. This will be your safest approach if you can get there, because you're going to save a lot of situations that you could. So when we're communicating with people, you're not going to use all these skills at the same time. And many of you have probably learned all these skills, but it's how am I going to get to that interest-based approach with someone that I basically, A, may not have a lot of time for because my day is really busy, B, I have things to do, and C, I just don't know what to do because the person is so frustrated or so anxious or so angry. So what I want to do is I really do want to listen. And how I'm going to listen is I'm going to use those attending skills. And that's, I'm going to give them eye contact, I'm going to nod, and I'm just going to be present with them in the moment and listen to what they have to say. I'm going to ask a series of questions. They're going to be open-ended, which are the who, what, where, when, and then close actions. So how come you need this? What do you need? What time did this happen? So the yes or the no's, right? The open-ended questions are those that are going to get the person to generate more conversation. How did this happen? They're going to tell you the story. At what time? Closed-ended question. They're going to say at 3:20. So you're going to clarify the question. I see I have a chat here. Sometimes you just have to drop any thought. Yes, excellent. What I have here is somebody who said, sometimes you just have to drop any thought of other things you are thinking about and give that time to genuinely work with that person. Absolutely. And it is difficult. Trying to be present and in the moment and really trying to genuinely get that genuine understanding is difficult. I find that on a daily basis where I have to say, flip your phone upside down. You have a staff who really has something that they want to talk to you about. Don't answer the phone. Don't look to see who just got that email, because being present and having people feel heard is very important. Sometimes when people are really stressed out or in crisis or getting angry, they are telling you multiple stories at the same time. They are saying, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And there's so much going on that you're trying to piecemeal together what's really happening. Paraphrasing is very beneficial in this situation. That's just dropping what they've said in the past minute or so into a few lines. So you're feeling really stressed out because every time you try to make this payment online, an error occurs. You know, they're like, yes, thank you for finally hearing me, right? Oh, and this computer format is new to you, and pre-COVID, you used to be able to go and pick up or pay the check in person. Now you can't. Yes, thank you, right? You're feeling heard. The minute somebody starts to feel heard, their emotions start to diffuse. Silence. Probably one of the hardest skills I had to learn, and I'm still working on it. Silence is critical to listening to someone. We not necessarily need to see them venting, hear them venting, but giving them that opportunity. As a fixer, as a talker, my habits have often been, let's ping pong that conversation. They stop the sentence. I feel like I need to fill that air. It's okay. It's actually okay to have somebody talk, them stop what they're saying, us not respond right away, and then listen to what they're saying next. Because that silence may allow somebody who's feeling very emotional to gather their thoughts for a few minutes and continue what they're saying. However, if we continue interjecting every time there's a break, they may lose their next train of thought. They may start to escalate again. Mirroring is just repeating the few last words. And sometimes when somebody's really agitated or talking quickly, that can just draw the person back in. So somebody may say, I don't know what to do anymore. And then you say anymore, and they're like, yeah, I don't know what I can do. This whole day has been frustrating me. I don't even know how to work a computer. And you say, work a computer. It seems trivial, but if you watch yourself within the next few days, you'll probably catch yourself having a conversation with someone and mirroring their few last words. It's just another form of questioning, really. And then summarizing is just taking back that whole conversation into a Coles Note version. So when you came in here today, you were really frustrated because you were having difficulty with online payments. It kept rejecting it. People were not allowing you to come into areas to pay payments off, but you did not know how to work the form. So you're just going to kind of talk about and tie that conversation up in a nice little bow. I have another great comment here. Thank you. Mirroring can also take the form of pacing your speech with the other person or slightly slower to assist with the de-escalation. Absolutely. Again, we don't want to be doing what I have a tendency or try really hard not to do, which is bringing the same energy as the person who might be escalated or trying to rush to get something. So just mirroring that conversation can really just slow down the pace, allow them to elaborate. Years ago, I had a teacher who told me that a perfect interview for 1 hour, you ask 5 questions. I haven't achieved that yet, but really it just is a good balance to show how much talking we should be doing versus how much talking somebody who is in an emotional state should be doing. We should be directing and de-escalating by providing that time. So when we want to diffuse an emotion, this is just, again, a little summary. We want to be interest-based. We want to balance that approach. We want to set limits with appropriate payoffs and consequences. Again, don't want to bring back people feeling emotional to young children. But when I think about young children who, if you say, oh, go clean up your toys, and they say, well, why? Why? And when we say, well, because grandma and grandpa are coming and we want to have a clean living room. You know, oh, it's time for bed. Now, why? If we just say, well, because I told you so, it doesn't really work. We spend the time explaining why we want something to be done. When you're diffusing somebody's emotion, you really want to genuinely do that. You want to say to someone, listen, I can see how frustrated you are, and I really want to help. However, when you're talking in such a raised voice, you're drawing a lot of attention, and it's tough to do that. So you just basically want to just set limits, right? Use your attending skills and be genuine. People can definitely read body language. As much as we may be reading the body language of someone who is anxious or defensive, they will also be able to read ours. So if our words are saying, I care, I want to help, but our body language and our facial expressions are saying, this is the 17th time I've heard this today. Do you really think this is new to me? The person who is feeling will feel that emotion off of you. So it's important to be truly genuine in what we're doing and saying. So when things go from bad to worse, I'm not quite sure what area some of you are, if most of you are from Winnipeg, outside of Manitoba, but there's different avenues. And here's just, it'll show, so in the Manitoba government, there's a communication center. And so if something's happening, some staff have the ability to pull a duress alarm, and that can have security services that can come help them. Others have a number that'll call to a communication dispatch center that will send a mobile patrol vehicle that'll come down. There's also 911, or your police service of jurisdiction in a situation that goes from bad to worse. But depending on how that is, it may take them a very long time to attend, or your employer or building's program safety services. So some of you may have different buildings where you walk in and there's security. Others may not. If you're unsure of who do I call if a situation goes from bad to worse, you can definitely ask your office and your team. And if they don't know, the facility manager should have an idea about who can help us out in those situations. So when it comes to office safety, know your exit routes. So we know them all really well when it comes to, oh, this is going to be our 2-time-a-year fire drill. You're going to leave this office and go. But what happens in a situation where there might be somebody in an aggressive state? Is there somewhere in my office that I could go? Is my area, do I have a partner who's got, 4 offices down? Do they have a door that we can hide ourselves behind? Staff are often really reluctant to contain themselves in a safe situation with risk that somebody could trash the office and get us in a situation where we're in trouble at work. However, safety first. If you are in a situation where you absolutely feel fear, where you absolutely feel that your life is in jeopardy, you find that exit route, you lock yourself in that area, and you call for help. Know who your neighbors are. So I may know everybody in my office, but do I know who is in the office next to me? If I'm in a strip mall and I'm in the strip mall here, do I know who my office members are on both sides? Most offices or staff have someone in their region who can provide safe walk programs. So the safe walk programs can be done whether through the jurisdiction, so through what we used to call here downtown watch, through our protective services in Manitoba. There can be walks to your car where you just make that number and you just go. And the last thing before we go to questions that I want to quickly talk about are the lockdown principles. So for any of us that have kids that have gone through school in the last 10 years, they're quite used to it. We grew up in a time where we would do evacuation safety on our buses, and we would do evacuation safety when we started working in the workforce or school, but our evacuations were just for fire. Now there's lockdown principles. So police of jurisdictions will come down, they have a unit if you are interested, and they will talk about basically active shooter situations in your workforce and the principles that they follow, which are run, hide, and flight. Also, different buildings have different situations. But a Coles Note version of if you have an extreme dangerous situation would be the principle of run, hide, flight. So active shooter type of situation, something very tragic that we hope nobody ever goes through. The first thing you do is run. Run if you can get to a safe exit, and run, you continue to run. The basis is if you're not in there, you are counted as not a casualty. So you just go as quickly as you can. The second one is hide. If I'm in a situation where I don't have the abilities to run, I have 15 stories in a building, what you're going to do is you're going to run to hide, to find a place to hide. If that's a public washroom, you get up on the washroom. If it's under a desk, you close an office door, you get under the desk. You just hide to the best of your abilities. Lower your cell phone, lock the lights, shut the doors, and you wait. You wait until somebody from your police or jurisdiction will come and let you out. So you don't just release yourself when you think it's going to get quiet. Somebody will come through the buildings and make sure that people are safe. So that is it for the formal presentation today. I apologize if I was a little too wordy or talked too fast, but before we go off, they're just going to leave an opportunity for questions or for comments about, what you might have taken away from today's presentation, or if there's something that you might do differently. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything. I appreciate it. Okay.
I have a question. Because this is a very interesting topic. We were wondering, does Protective Service provide training for our Manitoba staff?
Protective Services do not provide training for Manitoba staff at the time. So they are security services that are in buildings. There's a technical unit that can do security assessments, but there is no training at this time for staff. I have a question here. Thank you.
So, another question. You mentioned that there are courses that we can take. What courses are they?
Oh, so community colleges often have communication courses. There's some private courses that can teach non-violence crisis intervention. So there's communication courses, non-crisis. There's oftentimes, if you want to look at personal safety courses in different community clubs with different types of martial arts just for your own personal protection. So on your own time, there's just different avenues. of courses that people can take to enhance their skill.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Oh, I have questions. Good stuff. Oh, thank you. Thanks.
So those resources, Nicole, are they technically, where do we get those resources? Are they just in the community colleges? Can we
Community, yes, there's community colleges that have them. Personal safety is different community centers sometimes, or different martial arts groups that'll have that, and non-violence crisis intervention and programs like that. Those are accredited courses that different people can come into your workforce and teach.
Okay, is there any other questions from everyone? Okay, if there is nothing more, thank you very much, Nicole. It was very informative. We learned a lot. And for everyone, thank you. You've been a very, very active participant in this webinar, and we hope to see you again in other sessions of IPAC. And if there's nothing more, again, thank you very, very much for a lovely day.